Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. We're here to tackle a question many of you might be asking about a really fascinating company in the biotech space. Today, we're asking, is Recursion Pharmaceuticals a good time to buy now? Now, before we jump in, if you find our insights valuable, please do subscribe, like, comment, maybe even consider buying us a coffee. And hey, if there's a specific company you'd like us to look into, just leave us a comment below. Joining me, as always, is our expert guide to help us navigate the complexities here. We've gathered quite a bit of source material on Recursion Pharmaceuticals, and our mission today is really to sift through it all, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight for you.
It's definitely a compelling question. I mean, companies right at that intersection of technology and biology, they always present an interesting case, and Recursion Pharmaceuticals certainly fits that bill. You've got significant upside potential, absolutely, but also some pretty considerable headwinds. What's fascinating here is how different pieces of information seem to paint a rather varied picture,
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this then. Recursion Pharmaceuticals. It's not just a typical pharmaceutical company, right? They're leveraging this AI-powered drug discovery platform, but what's their core strategy for growth? How does that AI actually, speed things up or cut costs compared to traditional methods?
Exactly. That's really the core of their strategy. They're using this advanced AI platform to genuinely try and accelerate drug discovery and development. But crucially, they're not trying to do it all alone.
Oh.
They're forming multiple high-value collaborations with major pharmaceutical companies. This does two things. It expands their pipeline much faster than they could alone, and it secures substantial non-dilutive funding.
Right, non-dilutive. So money coming in without selling more stock.
Precisely, which is absolutely vital for R&D in this incredibly capital-intensive industry. It helps de-risk things a bit.
And these aren't just like small side deals, are they? Our sources were highlighting some really significant agreements. For example, they're working with Bayer. That's on treatments for fibrosis. And that deal alone could bring in up to, $1.5 billion in milestone payments?
That's right, $1.5 billion potential, plus tiered royalties on top of that if things go well.
And then there's the agreement with Roche, focusing on neuroscience and oncology. Roche has the option to launch up to 40 programs.
40 programs, yeah.
Yeah.
And each one of those could potentially yield more than $300 million in milestones for Recursion, again, along with royalties. The potential scale is huge.
Wow. Those are massive numbers.
And if you connect this to the bigger picture, these aren't just isolated deals either. They also have partnerships with Sanofi and Merck. So that further diversifies their pipeline across areas like oncology, immunology, and neuroinflammation.
Okay, so diversification through partnership. Exactly. Together, these collaborations represent literally billions in potential milestone opportunities, plus those potential consistent royalty streams down the line. This structure, it really helps validate their AI platform in the eyes of big pharma, and importantly, provides a crucial financial cushion.
Right, validation and cash. But beyond these big pharma collaborations, Recursion is also making some pretty big moves in its own AI infrastructure, aren't they?
Yeah.
They upgraded their supercomputer, BioHive 2, in 2024 with NVIDIA.
A significant upgrade.
And then there was the acquisition of Exscientia late last year. That added, over 20 programs to their portfolio?
Yes, over 20 programs, and it boosted their total potential milestone opportunity to more than $20 billion.
$20 billion. That's quite a number.
It certainly is. And this really raises an important point about their commitment, their ambition to be a leader in this tech bio space. They're not just relying on pharma partnerships, they're also collaborating with tech giants like Google Cloud, Helix, Faro Health.
All aimed at enhancing their AI capabilities even further. These are strategic moves designed to accelerate discovery, scale their platform, and really position the company for long-term success.
Okay, so lots of strategic ambition, big partnerships, tech investment. Sounds pretty good. But here's where it gets, really interesting, maybe a bit confusing for investors, because the market has seen some pretty dramatic swings for Recursion. On July 18th, 2025, just a few weeks back, the stock actually soared.
It did, yeah.
Shares jumped over 10%, I think maybe even up to 12% at one point. This was amid news that they secured full rights to a drug called REV102.
REV102, right. That's a potential treatment for hypophosphatasia.
A rare condition, yeah. Seems like a potential game changer for them.
Well, what's fascinating there is just how immediately the market reacted to that strategic win.
Yeah.
REV102 is definitely viewed as a promising solution for a serious rare condition. Gaining full control of that project, acquiring the full interest in the joint program they had with Rallia Bio, It clearly instilled significant investor confidence.
Yeah, the reports mentioned aggressive exuberance.
Exactly. Some reports use that phrase. On that specific day, the stock opened around $5.65, closed near $6.10, and even hit a high of $6.225 during the day. It showed some real resilience, despite what's been a pretty volatile journey overall for the stock.
And sources also mentioned an earnings report from the previous quarter, previous to that July news. It showed revenue of about $58.5 million. And while some key ratios maybe showed challenges even then, the optimism was high because of these strategic moves, like securing REV 102.
Right, that early report added to the positive sentiment around that time.
But now, fast forward just over a month to around August 20th, 2025, and we're seeing a very different picture emerge from more recent sources. Year to date, Recursion shares have actually plunged, nearly 23%?
Yeah, 22.8% down year to date, according to the recent data.
And that's against the industry only seeing maybe 0.1% growth, so significantly underperforming the sector and the S&P 500. So what does this all mean when we look at the financials more closely, the latest financials?
Well, this raises that important question, doesn't it? How do you reconcile those short-term rallies, like the one in July, with this broader, more recent underperformance? If we delve into the actual Q2 2025 financial report, Recursion reported revenues of $19.1 million.
19 million. Okay, not the 58 from the earlier report.
No, $19.1 million for Q2. Now, that's still robust year-over-year growth, actually, about 33.3%, and it did beat analyst expectations on the revenue front.
Okay, so revenue growth is there.
It is. However, the company posted a quarterly EPS, earnings per share, of -$0.41. That missed consensus estimates, and it continues this pattern of net losses. Their trailing 12-month EPS is sitting at -$0.78.
Oof.
And the profit margins, they're deeply negative, a really harsh negative 1,003.2% EBIT margin.
Minus 1,000%.
Yeah. It indicates that while revenue is growing, their cost structure is, very unfavorable right now. Profitability isn't really even on the horizon yet.
It sounds like they probably have adequate cash reserves for now, but that negative cash flow driven by these persistent losses, that has to be a significant concern long term, right?
Absolutely. Cash burn is a major watch item.
And looking ahead, consensus projections for the full year 2025 EPS, they've actually been revised downward repeatedly over the last month, now sitting around -$1.48.
That's correct. Those downward revisions reflect the ongoing concerns about profitability and cash burn. And what's fascinating, or perhaps concerning depending on your view, is how the valuation metrics reflect all this. Recursion trades at very high price-to-sales and price-to-book ratios. That's because sales are still relatively low compared to the market valuation, and they have those accumulated losses affecting book value.
Right, so the market's pricing in a lot of future hope.
Exactly. Their price-to-earnings ratio is negative, obviously, given the losses. These ratios are significantly above sector averages. It reflects what you can really only describe as a speculative premium, rather than being based on current intrinsic value.
So valuing a company like this must be incredibly challenging.
It really is. It relies so heavily on expectations of future drug approvals or major platform breakthroughs, things that are inherently uncertain. It injects considerable risk into any valuation attempt.
Okay, and in such an innovation-driven space, competition must be fierce. Who are Recursion's main competitors? How are they doing?
Yeah, the tech bio space is definitely competitive. Recursion faces strong competition from companies like Relay Therapeutics and Schrödinger. Both of them also leverage AI-driven platforms, and they're building out their own robust pipelines.
Okay, like what are they working on?
Well, Relay Therapeutics, for example, is advancing its lead candidate, RLY-2608, into a Phase 3 study. That's for metastatic breast cancer, a late-stage trial.
Phase 3, okay, that's significant.
It is. And Schrödinger, their lead asset, SGR-1505, is in an early-stage study for B-cell malignancies. But they also have other candidates moving into Phase 1 as well, so others are making progress too.
Right, so the race is definitely on. And shifting to the technicals again, that recent stock performance, pretty volatile sounds like an understatement. In that week leading up to August 20th, the stock went from around $5.77 down to $4.77, closing nearly 7% lower on that particular day.
Yes, that's a sharp decline in just a week. It underscores the volatility.
It really sounds like the overall trend is bearish right now.
Indeed. If you look at the charts, the moving averages are generally in a downtrend. Momentum indicators, they suggest the stock might be oversold, technically speaking.
Okay, so maybe due for a bounce?
Possibly. But they don't yet signal a confirmed reversal. There's no strong buy signal based purely on those indicators right now. And what probably fuels this bearish sentiment further is the significant insider selling we've seen.
Ah, insider selling, how much?
Over $3.26 million in shares traded away by insiders recently, according to our sources.
That does raise an important question, doesn't it? About how confident those closest to the company, the insiders, truly are about the near-term prospects.
It's often seen as a red flag, or at least a yellow one, by the market when insiders are selling significant amounts.
So if we try to summarize the key risk factors here, what really stands out for Recursion Pharmaceuticals?
Well, this raises several important points for potential investors. The major stock-specific risks are clear. That ongoing cash burn, the persistent net losses, the weak margin structure we talked about, and importantly, the potential for future dilution if they need to raise more capital by issuing more shares.
Right.
Then you layer on the broader market and sector risks. Biotech is inherently volatile. There are always regulatory hurdles. Competition is tough, as we mentioned, and any macroeconomic instability tends to disproportionately affect pre-revenue or loss-making companies like Recursion. They have less of a cushion.
Okay, so a lot of risks to weigh against that potential upside from the AI platform and partnerships. What about upcoming catalysts? What could change the story short-term or long-term?
For the short term, really the main scheduled event is the Q3 2025 earnings call. That's expected around November 5th.
Okay, so keep an eye out for that.
Definitely. However, based on recent trends and those downward EPS revisions, expectations might be somewhat muted unless there are some surprise positive developments announced.
And longer term.
Longer term, the key drivers are all about execution. Advancing their drug pipeline through clinical trials, getting positive data readouts, potentially securing new strategic partnerships, or maybe even making further acquisitions. And of course, hitting regulatory milestones, like getting an IND approved to start human trials, or ultimately, a drug approval.
So pipeline progress is really key.
Absolutely. Progress on those fronts could dramatically alter the outlook and the narrative around the company.
So let's bring it all together. For someone listening right now, considering an investment in Recursion Pharmaceuticals, is it a good time to buy? What's the bottom line from our sources?
Well, based on the information we've reviewed, the overall assessment seems to suggest a, let's call it high-risk, low-reward scenario at this specific moment. The overall rating from one key source was actually a 3 out of 10.
3 out of 10? Ouch!
Yeah. While they show that strong revenue growth, which is a positive, and have genuinely impressive strategic deals pointing to future potential, this is significantly offset by that extreme profit margin weakness, the persistent losses, the currently unattractive valuation ratios, and importantly, that recent insider selling.
Okay. So maybe not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It doesn't look suitable for short-term trading right now, given the heightened volatility and the current downside momentum. For long-term investment, it has to be viewed as highly speculative. It's really only appropriate for very risk-tolerant investors, maybe those with a venture capital type mindset, or someone with really deep sector-specific conviction who understands the long timelines and risks involved.
And for more conservative investors.
The advice is generally to wait. Wait for concrete improvements in profitability, better margins, maybe some positive shifts in insider confidence before considering an entry point. It's worth noting our sources indicate a Zacks rank #3, which translates to a hold, so not a sell, but certainly not a strong buy either.
Right. Recursion Pharmaceuticals clearly presents a really fascinating but complex picture. You've got this cutting-edge AI technology, these ambitious, potentially lucrative partnerships, transformative drug candidates maybe. Yet at the same time, they're grappling with pretty significant financial challenges and clear market skepticism right now.
Which really raises that final important question for you, the listener, to ponder. Given these conflicting signals, the exciting strategic partnerships on one hand versus the ongoing losses and recent market underperformance on the other, how do you weigh the promise of future innovation against the present financial realities, especially in a highly speculative sector like TechBio?
That's definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us on Investing Talk podcast today. We hope this exploration of the source material has given you a clearer picture of Recursion Pharmaceuticals. Until next time, stay well informed and make wise decisions.